I have another set of questions that I want to address. You mentioned at the beginning of our talk your concern that your concern in relationship to the use of fear. And we could say on the vaccine front that the vaccine mandates were pushed forward, especially the lockdown mandates, they were pushed forward with the use of fear, and that was conscious policy. I know in Canada, for example, that even the conservative types who were just as bad on the lockdown front, they polled the public. They made the public afraid first. Then they polled the public to find out what their fears were. Then they produced all sorts of lockdown regulations that were advanced to improve their standing in the polls. Then they told their scientists to justify those with scientific hypotheses post hoc. And so I've been thinking about that. So here's the conclusion. If there's a crisis that emerges, real or not, but let's say real, and your response to the crisis is that you become a fear-mongering tyrant, then you're the wrong leader for the time. Is that no matter what the crisis is, it is not morally acceptable for you to use fear and compulsion to put your policy platform forward. And so I wanted to talk about that a bit on the climate front. Well, I was actually concerned about talking to you today because I generally don't give my guests a rough time, but we, I think, have a profound difference of opinion in relationship to climate issues. And so one of the things that I've seen as I've traveled around the world is that the climate narrative, the apocalyptic climate narrative, we're destroying the planet and doom is nigh, has demoralized young people to a degree that's almost incomprehensible. I mean, you see it in the rising rates of depression and anxiety that characterize young women, and they're more susceptible to such things. But in men, you see it as this widespread dropping out of educational institutions and marriage and sexual relationships and employment. I think it's 20%, something like that, 20% of work-age men in the United States now haven't had any employment whatsoever in the last year. And I see this particularly paramount in Europe, where the climate apocalypse narrative has not only demoralized people en masse, especially young people, but it's produced a plethora of policies, and Germany is a canonical example, that have been, to put it mildly, counterproductive.